Welcome back everybody. We're now gonna take a close-up look of the Saberforge Bane. Let's start with the emitter section. As you can see, the Saberforge Bane has a very menacing shroud. The emitter actually exists out two pieces. So you have this shroud piece, and you have the emitter section, which is basically the body of the saber itself. Underneath it you have a prong, and that is actually also incorporated inside the body. The shroud itself is held in place by two retention screws, one on each side. If you want to take off the shroud, you can simply undo these two screws. This screw on the right side also acts as the blade retention screw, as this screw is slightly longer than the left screw. If you wish, you can replace the left screw for a slightly longer screw. Then you have two retention screws for the blade, while also keeping the shroud in place. One thing to note about the Saberforge Bane are the very sharp edges on the shroud area and the prong area. And with sharp, I mean really sharp. The edges on this here are very sharp. They easily could draw some blood from your skin. And the same accounts for this section, although you see there has been phrased down slightly, this edge here, but still it's not enough. It's quite sharp on the edges here. And the sharpest point of all is this area here. This is a razor sharp point. It really is. It's uncomfortable and slightly dangerous if you have kids. For example, I don't let my son near this saber. I'd be very careful when I handle this Bane around in the house, because this can potentially cause a lot of injury to a kid. Okay, we're moving on to the body section. So as you can see, the body section has a lot of details. It has these ribs on the bottom section, which are very reminiscent to the aliens from the Aliens movie, and it's something Shamim, one of the great artists that do custom installs on lightsabers and do customization on lightsabers. He made a Saberforge Bane that was more based on the Aliens movies, which was really nice. I will put a link to his video and you can see how beautiful that is. So you have the nice ribbons on the bottom section. You have the knuckle area here. It looks a little bit like a brass knuckle type of thing, where you have your finger grooves here, like it's like a reversed knuckle duster, and it's really nice for gripping. This area feels really smooth actually. This is the only part that really feels smooth, where Saberforge did some trouble to make sure this wasn't as sharp as opposing to the emitter section. And then it has nice detailing on the top as well, which allow for a very nice gripping area, and it is a nice firm grip on in the hilt. So even with my sweaty helm palms, I have no issues gripping this hilt at all. Now as you can see, there's still a gap here, and you can see there is some light shining through, but it isn't as bad as my last Bane. So from that point of view, I'm quite happy with this Bane. And we turn it slightly around, and they have more details. I like the weathering on the body section. It's very nice and naturally done, whereas the emitter section has the typical lines of the machine in which it spins around and wear off the black paint to create this weathering. It doesn't look as nice with these stripes here as it does look on the midsection. And then we go a little bit lower, and then we have the pommel. The pommel is a very interesting design. It's a very big bulky pommel. It's a very nice suiting pommel for this hilt design. It's also vented for sound, as you can see. Now the funny thing is, despite it's an all black saber, the vent hole itself is just silver. I preferred it was black as well, but cannot complain too much. And then we get to something that's a little bit interesting. I have a little bit mixed feelings about this, but it is the placement of the covertech wheel. It doesn't look very nice in my opinion. It's a plain regular covertech wheel that normally fits around the body of a straight hilt, and this time it's bolted on top of the pommel section, and it just sticks out too much. It feels out of place. It doesn't look as part of the saber, and I honestly don't like it too much. It's a stiff fit though. It's nicely and snugly fit on there, but it just doesn't look very appealing to me. I might remove it in the near future. And then we go a little bit up to the control sections. Now, as you can see, I received this Bane recently, as in, let's say, what is it now? It's now the 20th of June 2016, where Saberforge already launched their laser forge department, where they have these custom kill keys, and I personally don't like them. I don't like them at all, so I requested, can I have the old type kill key, which luckily they gave to me, because yeah, that's my personal preference. It's a little bit bulky though, compared to the new one, a big knob, but I mean, it will do, it will survive. And then the Bane has something interesting. If you buy a warrior tier, and the warrior tier is basically a stun saber, so light but no sound, then you get an in-hilt recharge port as well. The reason for that being is there is not a really easy way to access the battery, to replace the battery if you want to recharge your battery. The reason for that is when you remove the pommel, which is held in place by these two screws on the left and on the right, which also holds in place the covertech wheel. So if you would have to remove the pommel, then you have this curved area in which the battery houses. The battery is around here, and it wouldn't allow you to draw out the battery and replace it because the wires inside are short. The reason why the wires are short is because there's a limit of area here, because here's the control section, then you have some wires running here in this area, and then it has to meet the battery here, and there isn't much space in the bottom anymore, so there's not much space for additional long cables to draw out the battery. So that's why with the Saberforge Bane, as an exception for all their hilts, even if you buy a stun saber for the warrior tier, you get an in-hilt recharge port, standard. And it's kind of nice. I like it, because why I like it is that I'm gonna upgrade this Saberforge Bane. I'm gonna install a nano biscotti myself, and I'm gonna reuse a lot of the parts here, except the LED and the latching switch, but the rest I'm gonna reuse, and it saves me a few bucks on doing so. And don't worry, the LED and the switch will be repurposed for other Saberforge Initiate sabers. So, another neat feature about this Saberforge Bane is, as you might already know, the body has been casted in 2 halves. And that's the reason why a lot of the Banes actually have a gap in the body, because the casting is made out of alloy, and it isn't as accurate as something that has been phrased out by a machine, let's say a milling machine. So there will be always some margins greater than you can anticipate with a CNC milling machine. So for me it was a personal issue, because the other Bane, as you could see in my previous video, had a very big gap here, and I just did not like it. Plus I don't have the tools to actually fix this. I cannot do any metal or alloy adjustments, because I simply don't have those kind of equipment in my very small house. I can only be limited doing electronic installs. So just give you a heads up, because this is a casted main body, you can disassemble the Bane very easy. So you take out these screws for the pommel, then you take out these 2 screws for the middle section, and then you have basically only the body here, and then you have 2 screws here, and you have 2 screws here, and you unscrew those, and you can simply take off those 2 halves, and then you also have 2 screws here, which also allow you to remove the lower section, the lower prong. So actually this saber exists out in a very limited amount of separate parts, and once it is open you have two halves in which you can just put in the electronics you want to place there, connect everything up, solder it, close it again, and that's it. It's a very easy hilt to work on if you want to do electronics yourself. Actually, in fact, it would be so easy that I highly recommend, if you want to start installing lightsaber electronics yourself, to start off with a saber like this, because it's so much easier than, for example, a one-piece saber or a saber with a thin neck or a very narrow emitter section or a control section. This is so much easier to work on as a first saber. So yeah, that is definitely one of the reasons why I'm gonna install the Nano Biscotti. Another reason is this Saberforge Bane just screams for a soundboard. I feel without sound, just the light itself as a stun saber is just not, it's not cutting it. This saber has to be, it has to be sparked by sound, flash on class, and whatnot. And for me, I'm gonna install a gritty, bassy, heavy, dark sound font with a crackly sound, a little bit like Kylo Ren, but not per se an unstable saber, but just a crackling, like it's like the plasma of the lightsaber itself is spinning out like a dripping plasma, like a lava, like a little bit like a lava volcano type of thing, where it's just dripping off the plasma on the ground, and it's just a very dark, menacing, dangerous lightsaber to play with, to use. It just feels very dangerous, even to hold in your hands, because you don't know what will happen with it. Will it explode or whatnot? So yeah, looking forward to do the install. I'll make a video of that as well. So I'm gonna briefly show the details again. And while I'll do that, I also will cover this area. So the blade actually rests inside this socket. As you can see, the blade plug here, let me just turn on the light. The blade will rest in this socket. This shroud doesn't really hold the blade in place. This is actually, as you can see, this is the 1-inch diameter for the blade itself. Here you go, in this area. And this one, yeah, is just basically for aesthetic looks. The prong itself will actually lean against the blade, and it doesn't slap around when you have the blade inside. It doesn't slap up and down, so it's nice and snug. I think it helps to stabilize the blade a little bit stronger. If you hit it from this area, the blade will absorb some of the impact by this prong. So that might have some impact, because instead of the polycarbonate of your blade taking all the flex and impact, the saber will take some more beating as well, beside the regular emitter section with a lot of straight lighter sabers. And also, as you could just see, this is the gap mentioned earlier. So I don't have as big gap here in this area now. I have some gap here, so some light is escaping through this two half sections. You can see the screw as well. This is one of the screws I mentioned that holds these two halves together. So I'm gonna fix this by putting some tape behind it. I'm not really stoked about that, but I don't want to send it back to Saberforge again and go to a whole 1.5 waiting list again. So yeah, we're gonna leave it as is. So I hope you guys enjoyed the quick, brief close-up look. Now we're gonna back to the verdict area. Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you liked the video. Hopefully I covered everything that you wanted to know. And we're now gonna install two different blades. One from Saberforge, a 24-inch heavy grade blade, and a Vader's Vault enhanced daylight blade. I forgot the name. Is there a version that is all grinded up, that supposedly diffuse the light better? So let me grab the Saberforge hilt, Saberforge blade first. So we start off with the Saberforge 24-inch blade. Installs easy. Now, like all Saberforge hilts, this hilt is no exception. But without doing the retention screw yet, there is a noticeable amount of wobble on the blade, between the blade and the hilt socket, and that is typical Saberforge. Unfortunately, they have a their spacing between the socket of the hilt and the blade itself has quite a bit of variation, and it's always wobbly. But one thing that is different for the Saberforge Bane is that once you tighten up the blade retention screw, this blade won't go anywhere. It's snug, it's stiff, and it won't wobble anymore. There's no wobble. The only wobble you hear is maybe some parts that I accidentally hit, but there's no wobble there anymore. This is the first Saberforge saber that I endure that does not have the wobble, because all Saberforge sabers I have so far, they have this wobble which makes the handling of the saber a little bit funky, and it doesn't feel very good to my opinion. So let's turn off the light. It's full daylight. It's around 11:30 a.m. in the morning in Hong Kong, so it's nice and bright outside. As you see, the 12 plus watt LED, or the 12 watt LED with the enhanced lens, has a nice amount of light coming out of it. It's nice and bright on the bottom section, and it dies off a little bit more in the mid section here. Now this is a 26-inch blade, so the distance is shorter to the reflective mirror in the tip. So in theory, a 26 inch blade should always be illuminated slightly better from bottom to tip, but I can see some dullness here. It isn't bad, but you can definitely see some dullness compared to here. So let's move over to the Vader's Fold blade very quickly, and then we wrap up this section. So first thing I noticed upon inserting the 32-inch Vader's Fold blade is the wobble isn't as much as on the Vader's Fold. So there's already less wobble on this blade with this emitter section. There's still wobble though, but it isn't that bad as with the Saberforge native blade. Tidying it up. Okay. So insert in this Saberforge Bane, we have now the Vader's Fold enhanced blade. And I do see definitely quite a bit of difference. The illumination is much more equal in the whole section. I see no difference in the bottom section or the top section. I do see a slight dullness in this area, but it isn't as prominent on the Saberforge blade. So yeah, it's nice. But personally I don't like the rounded tip for just displaying. For dueling is fine, it's very good actually, but for displaying I prefer a pointed tip. So let's do a quick verdict on this hilt. Initially, when Saberforge gave me their initial Saberforge hilt, I was very unhappy. You can see it in a separate video. I was just very displeased with what I got. I did not like the all black body finish with the silver shroud and the silver pommel. It's just not my cup of tea. I really disliked it. It had a massive gap between the two casted alloy body halves, and it was just very displeasing to see that what I received. So I reached out to Saberforge. They responded very quickly. It was ordered by through their Etsy website, by the way, on the 24th of February. And it took around 3 months to receive it. And then they say, okay, yeah, I'm really sorry for the mess. Please, they said, here's 50 bucks. We ship it back to us and we will replace it. So I did that, waited for 1.5 months, which was actually much longer than I expected. Anyhow, received this Bane and I'm very happy now. It's a very nice Bane. It does still have some gap issues on the body, I have to admit that, but it's not as bad as it was. and overall aesthetically with the aesthetics of the saber I'm very pleased with. Now the pros, this is a perfect cosplay piece. This is just an awesome hilt for cosplaying or a shelf queen. So for aesthetics I definitely give it a 5 out of 5, no doubt. It's a very unique design. I never saw something alike from any other sabersmiths on the market as of yet. It's just its own standing design, very different, very impressive, very nice, very aesthetically pleasing to look at. For dueling, I would give it a 5 out of 5. Now the reason for that is, for dueling, I mean, it must be a cup of tea to work with a curved hilt. It's a very different experience. I'm not so much experienced with dueling with a curved hilt at all, so I wouldn't be able to say much about that. There are videos on YouTube that do a very good job on that. I believe one of the YouTubers, I forgot his name, is something Bane, Lord something. Sorry dude if I forgot your name, but he do a very good job explaining with a massive British accent, by the way, very nice, I like that. But he explains the pros and cons of the saber much better than I can do, because he really shows a compassion for his Banes and he knows his things. And I saw him doing dueling training and it looks very good. So for dueling I would say definitely 5 of 5. Be minded, there are some sharp edges though, so you might want to file them down if you want to use your bare hands for dueling, or if you want to give it to a younger person. Like personally, I wouldn't let my son touch this Bane because it's just way too sharp on too many areas. The prong is just crazy sharp. The emitter section is crazy sharp. It's just not comfortable and a little bit dangerous. So I'm not giving this to my son unless I do some modification to it and yeah, make sure that all those edges are smoothed down like heck. For spinning, I'm not even gonna bother with spinning. I would give it a 1 out of 5 for the reasons that it's just way too sharp in this area. It is a curved hilt, but that wouldn't per se mean you cannot spin with it, but it's just the sharp edges are, yeah, they're a mess. They will hurt your hand. So Saberforge has to up their quality control in terms of finalizing the project, making sure there's no sharp edges, because I can imagine how can a company in the US sell these kind of projects with a potential risk on harming the seller. Especially in the US, there are a lot of lawsuits and people try to get some money from people by just claiming that they have been injured and they need compensation for the rest of their life. So I find it very interesting how a company in the US could still sell these kind of products that are so sharp on the edges and whatnot. Anyway, that's my personal opinion. Do I love the saber? Absolutely. It is an absolutely delight to the eyes. It's a very, very, very pleasing saber to look at. I would say go to Saberforge, grab one yourself, and enjoy the saber, because it's an absolutely blast. Thank you, and see you in the next video. And as always, stay scummy. Yeah.